Welcome to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. We don't shy away and keep secrets here. We empower you with education, telling you the truth about all things aesthetic medicine while encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. It's time to look great and feel good doing it. This is your host, mom, speaker, and board-certified physician, Dr. Judith Borger.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 80 of the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. This is Dr. Judith Borger. Today, I have the immense pleasure to be joined by Dr. Jennie Eckstrom. Dr. Jennie Eckstrom is really remarkable. She is a fellow multi-passionate entrepreneur and doctor. She is a full-time practicing family medicine physician in Montana. She is the managing partner of her practice. She manages commercial real estate. She is also a real estate investor and a coach at Uncluttered Mind MD. And she is hosting a retreat this year that I'm so sad I can't attend, but I'm excited to come next year. That's a promise. So come join me. But anyways, Dr. Jennie and I have this thing in common that we wear many, many hats, and it is the way we feel most fulfilled, letting all of the facets of our personality shine. I sometimes think of it as a diamond that's shining brightly from all of its varied angles. So because of Dr. Eckstrom and I both doing many, many things and wearing many, many hats, that is exactly what I really wanted to talk to her about, being multi-passionate. So please help me welcoming Dr. Jennie Eckstrom to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. Well, friends, like I said, today I have the amazing Jennie Eckstrom with me, and I'm so excited to talk to her about a topic that I call multipassionate, or sort of being somebody that wears a lot of hats, because I think there is a certain amount of people that will completely feel like this sounds so overwhelming. But then there are those of us who feel like they kind of want all facets of us to be able to have a say in our world, be able to live out and be able to shine. So I'm just going to call this episode Multi-Passionate Entrepreneurs, and welcome, Jennie.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, so we kind of have connected through multiple of our ventures. And I think that again shows that we both play in multiple realms. And I think you and I, it's one of the things that we have in common, that we do many, many things. So first of all, will you tell our listeners kind of what are all the things that you currently do on a personal and professional basis?
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. My friend used to call it all of my manic hobbies, and I used to feel guilty about them. And now I just realized that the space I live in best is one where I can do all the things. And so I am a family physician in Montana. I practice in an independent clinic that's 15 miles from my childhood home. And as a part of that independent clinic, we have purchased and own our real estate that our clinics are held in. And I, from the very get-go of being in my practice, was always very interested in the business of medicine, of what made it work, of how we could leverage technology. I implemented an EMR. I sort of have my IT innovation is sort of just something that comes intrinsically to me. And so that has really allowed us to excel in our business and remain independent in a medical environment that maybe has not been the best for that. We're seeing obviously DPCs pop up all over the place, but we are currently the largest independent medical practice, primary care practice in the state of Montana. So that has been really exciting. So that piece, that real estate, and I think you and I have sort of interacted in both the real estate realm and then in sort of the entrepreneurial realm. So as I have really loved all the things that I've done, I've really sought out people who really have that entrepreneurial spirit, who are always looking for how can I use the skills that I have more and better. So it's been really fun just to be able to wear those different hats and to think about which hat I'm wearing at any given time because we make different decisions if we're the business owner, if we're the employed physician, if we are the landlord. So it's been fun to see all of those pieces come together.
On top of that, though, I want to kind of highlight a couple more things I'm aware of. I mean, you only told me about what you do in Montana with your practice. You are also an amazing coach. You're a podcaster, you're a retreat host, and you're a real estate investor. So I think, again, you left out half the bio.
Well, I think what's interesting though is it was that foundation and maybe feeling a little bit like, is this all there is? That led me down that path of saying, what can I do with this knowledge that I have? And so you're absolutely right. 2 years ago, actually three, oh my goodness, in 2022, I was like, how do I make more of an impact? How do I take what I have done and this expertise that I have built over the last, now I'm into my 19th year in private practice, and how do I do more with this? And so it was out of that that really Uncluttered Mind MD was born. And it's a little tongue in cheek because I have a lot of things going on at any given time. So my mind is anything but uncluttered. So it felt just like a real fun play on words to that just gave me the permission to do all the things. So it started out with me beginning hosting an online group of independent practitioners, entrepreneurs, and I did that for a year or so. And then I said, pandemic had passed. I really wanted to connect more in person with people. And so a year ago, I said, I'm going to rent a house in Montana. I'm going to invite a bunch of people and we're just going to see what happens. And so that was Winter Wonderland, our first weekend. And there was beautiful magic that came out of that. And so I'm hosting in 2 weeks Winter Wonderland 2.0, and it is a bigger group and just an amazing group of women. And I just count myself so lucky to be in this space where I'm surrounded by such amazing humans and the collaboration and the ideas and the energy that comes from that.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder, as you were speaking, I wonder if already that sort of personality trait was evident in why you went into family medicine, because I think it was definitely part of why I went into emergency medicine, is because I did not like want to talk about just kidneys for the rest of my life.
You're absolutely right. I was one of those kids that wanted to be a doctor. I was the first physician in my family. My family had all gone to college, but I was the first physician. And like at 10, 11, I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to be a pediatrician. But then I realized that at 18, that then those kids went and found another doctor. And I loved the relationship. So I think you hit it like on the head, that it's really relationships that are the things that fill me up. It's what drives me. I love finding the nuances out about people, what makes them tick. I love remembering the little details. I think of them as like little hooks in my brain of the trip or the whatever. And I think as I've watched now entrepreneurs go out and do their things, I like to remember the nuances, the reasons why they want to step out and claim space of their own. So it's just incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, so do you coach mainly entrepreneurs then, or do you coach anybody?
Yeah, so that has been my niche, and it's really been more of that business coaching. I intentionally did not, although I've done a ton of personal coaching and entrepreneurial coaching for myself, I intentionally did not go and seek any certification, mostly to prove to myself that the 18 years on the job of being a managing partner of a large practice and managing a large real estate portfolio that spanned commercial, short-term rentals, that was enough. I think one of the things that I have found for myself is it's that idea that I can't do this until I have a certification, until somebody gives me a stamp of approval. So it's me really claiming that space and that confidence in myself and saying, what I have is unique. I don't know that there are a lot of people, even in the worlds that you and I run in, that have that type of business experience that has just been something I've been fortunate to grow up in.
I love that. I love that. And I think, you know what, I do see that a lot with some of the people that I coach is that you're right. They're always like, well, I'll do the next training and I'll do the next training. And it become, I don't know if it's perfectionism sometimes that gets in the way, or just like, yeah, this like deep down uncertainty that, and you and I also know that there's certain things in life that you just have to do, especially in entrepreneurship.
Well,
Nothing that you learn theoretically is as good sometimes as like the school of life and the school of just doing it, and you have that. You have more than that.
yeah, and I don't want to minimize the importance of mindset coaching. I mean, I have personal coaches, I do group coaching, I do all the things. And I think we also then just need to stand. And again, I think we have different people for different spaces in our life. And so it has just been really exciting for me to get to be in that space of business coaching and development, see where that takes us. And so
What really strikes me about your answer, and I want to mirror that back to you, is really a certain like being aware of your magic. And I love that because I think all of us who know you can see your magic, and just the fact that you have this like presence that I don't know how to describe it, but just like you, everybody who interacts with you, or at least I can say that since the moment that I had the pleasure of interacting with you, I can see that you're a relationship person, and that relationship feels genuine, and that relationship feels authentic, and it feels heartfelt. So I love, love, love that you are owning your magic.
it has definitely been a journey. It has taken me a while. And I think for all of us who've sort of grown up in medicine where we're seeking for the next thing because we think that's going to be the piece that is going to tell us that we're enough. I mean, I'm definitely somebody who my default is to get that external validation, that external information to say that what I'm doing is correct. And so really owning that magic has been a growth journey in and of itself. And I would say it's still a place I'm growing.
Yeah, and it is really what this multi-passionate life is all about, right? Because you're saying, this is me, in a way, this is my zone of genius. How do you describe it to people when they're like, well, Jenny, why is it that you're doing 8 things instead of just one? Because I'm sure you get that question once in a while.
Would
Isn't it
we get
enough that you're a doctor? Isn't it enough that you're running the practice? Isn't it enough? But it's not about enough, is it?
it really isn't. And I've had this conversation with people, and I think it really comes down to wanting to be true to myself and then also really wanting to impact other people. And if you think about when we were taking tests and it was all about like knowing all the things yourself and taking the test and getting your own score, but that was then limited by what we could do on our own. If we
Mhm,
can get in a space where we collaborate and we share ideas and we share information, and it's basically like life is a big group project, right? What can I
mhm,
learn from you that helps me take 3 or 4 steps forward? And I love to live in that abundance of just that knowledge sharing so that we all can go together further, whether that's in a real estate purchase, somebody who's looking at a commercial space for a business that they want to do, somebody who wants to know, like, gosh, I'm setting up a short term rental. How do I manage that space? Or should I have a rental manager? I'm doing medical practice. I want to do it. I'm worried about overhead. Where are ways that I can correct that? How can I make sure I get my dictations done? I mean, all of those pieces. And it seems like it's a lot of stuff. And I think when you're someone like ourselves who are doing all the things, it doesn't feel like it, right?
mhm.
Because we're just so fluidly in all the moments. But so I think the inclination is maybe not to recognize how much we actually have from a knowledge standpoint and how much we have to share and how that can bring the person behind us up a step. So I always want to be looking forward to people who can inspire me and who I can learn from. And I always want to be looking back and say, who can I show the steps to take along the way so maybe that they don't have to do the stumbles that I experienced.
When do you know that your time is like wisely spent and optimized versus like getting into a space of taking up too much and overachieving in that, in that space when maybe that's a little bit of like a historic pattern of compensation?
Yeah, that is definitely a balance. And I will say that is something that I'm continuing to learn. I mentioned that in the past, and I still have very much an interest in IT and innovation. And in that space of trying to like make an impact, I was doing a project for the hospital as their chief medical information officer, and I had an opportunity for what would have been like a traveling job. It made 0 sense, but I was actually considering it, and at that time, I had 2 young daughters at home, and I remember my husband sitting me down and saying, "Do you wanna be with us?" And in my mind, I didn't have it. I wasn't intentionally choosing not to be with my family. I was choosing things that I felt were allowing me to have impact, and thank goodness that I had this person in my world who had the insight and the care for me to point that out. And so I think it is a delicate balance as we have all of these opportunities to go and engage in conferences and retreats, in individual events, all of the things. I think we sometimes may overcommit. And I certainly, like this last fall, I was at something every other weekend and realized that maybe that wasn't the right balance for me. So I think part of it is just having grace and recalibrating and really allowing the important people in our life to have some input and say, when do they want us to be around? And maybe also making that a priority. So I know you and I've had those conversations of how you balance on your schedule. And I really heard that, and that was really impactful to me. So it's a work in progress for certain.
Well, and I mean, I strongly believe in seasons of life, right? Like, you and I have talked that right now I still have small children. So that season of life might look very different. My oldest is in college, like when they're all in college. And sometimes, too, like some of the women that we see that might have older kids, it seems like they're somewhere all the time. But then we also have to remember some of them might be empty nesters and some of them might not have spouses, and that might just be more of their community and their social network also. But yeah, I think that's also one of those things, and I think that's when I have found being really connected to myself also. I love that you brought up your husband and your children because that's obviously number one. But two, I feel like again, it's in those quiet moments when you allow them and you really feel inward that the answer is within you when you're suddenly like, wow, like suddenly this feels a little more overwhelming than energizing. Like, how can I add it?
Yeah. And I'm definitely on that cusp. I mean, I'm in the last season of having people at home, and I'm really sort of looking forward. I think that's the other piece is like, how do we set ourselves up so that when we have those changes, like, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my time freedom to be? How do I make those choices now that put me in this space where then as I want to take on different things, or maybe I want to shift what I'm doing, like from a clinical standpoint and what I'm doing in the Uncluttered Mind community, what I'm doing in person events. And so, really being intentional, not only about what's happening in the moment, but what decisions am I making that make decisions in the future maybe a possibility.
I think what's really different a little bit about you really looking at some of the entrepreneurs in our community is that you're still working full time, correct?
I am working full time. Yes.
What has still given you the desire and the passion to want to continue to do that?
Well, partly I really do love my practice. I love what we're doing. I love the impact we're making in our community. I have really deep roots. I mean, I'm living in a community 10 miles literally from the house I was born in and slept in until the day before I was married. And I've been in the same house here, and for the season that my kids are in school, this is where we be. And so if we are here, this is where we be. This is where we are. And so for this season, it makes a lot of sense. And I also, as I mentioned relationships, I will tell you that I derive a lot of joy from the relationships with my patients. And now having had the privilege to care for some families for almost 2 decades, and some of those are people that like I've known for the majority of my life. And so that is not something that I take lightly. So it's balancing those relationships, the impact that I'm having in my business, and really getting a lot of joy of being a important part of the management of that business and wanting to see it grow, balancing that with the desire to impact other people as they're on their entrepreneurial journey or their real estate investing journey, and wondering where that will go. I think what I do know about myself is that this season is yet a season. It's a long season, but I really do see that change and more opportunity coming down the road.
I love that. And I assume a lot of you said you have a lot of roots, but then also you say you're a managing partner. I think a lot of what physicians are feeling and a lot of corporations, I'm sure that's not physicians, but employees, is that they don't feel like they have a voice. They feel
Mhm.
powerless. They feel like a cog in the wheel. And I'm sure some people are running to entrepreneurship to kind of get away from things versus to step into something. And
Mhm.
especially, being in aesthetics, I feel
Mhm.
like the amount of people that I have coming to me being like, I just want to leave whatever I'm doing and go into aesthetics and my world will be fine. And then I got to be like, whoa, 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 that's not exactly how it works. But still, a business and it's still a job and it will still probably only work if you're actually passionate about it and you don't just do it to get away from whatever. But I assume the fact that you really use words like impact and you're a partner and you feel like it making a big difference, is that what you feel like a lot of the people kind of coming to entrepreneurship to seek guidance from you are sometimes feeling like they want to get away versus get to somewhere?
What I would say is, in my community, I would say that there is still a lot. I don't think it's running away from medicine. I think it's that desire
No,
to
running away
really
from
care
the
for people.
corporation
Yes.
feeling lack of
Well,
control.
but and the reason why I started with that though is that I do think that there's this desire to escape, right? There's
Mhm.
this desire to escape medicine and do other things completely. And really the space that I love seeing is finding ways for folks to still be able to love the medicine that they spent so much time and effort in cultivating those skills. And how do we do that? Is that in a DPC practice? Is that in a coaching program? Is that in a niche? Is it some hybrid? Is it that I'm doing locums so that I can do some of these other things? And that's what I love about it is it's not just one thing. And I'm saying a lot of this from a place of really owning what I can do, owning the niche that is my practice within an organization, because I will tell you that there was a story that I told myself for a long time about how I didn't have control, how I didn't have any autonomy, and it was a story, but it was one that I believed, and almost to the point where I said, what else is out there? Like maybe independent practice isn't for me. Maybe I should go be an employee somewhere. And so I think also recognizing that we don't, just as you alluded to, we want to be careful not to leave one situation just to jump into another source of pain. If anything, I'm a very like, I think and overthink and think a lot about each decision that I make, sometimes to a fault, but still finding that space where we can find a way to practice medicine, show up for patients, or just show up for ourselves in a way that really honors our root desire. And some of that is still in employed medicine or in locums because of what opportunities it affords you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when are you happiest?
Somebody else asked me this question as well. I'm honestly happiest when I am having true connection with people. That can be in my exam room with a patient I love. And usually, if I'm happiest, I'm probably singing or dancing along with it. So you
Mhm.
get to see that authentic, effervescent version of me at my happiest point. So much to the chagrin of my partners, maybe of my children, but that is, I'm the happiest when that comes out. And it's usually when I am feeling true and authentic connection. And fortunate for me, it's not just in one silo of my world. It shows up in my family, it shows up with my friends, it shows up in these beautiful communities, that it shows up in my clinic. And so I just feel so much gratitude for being at that space where I can find that happiness in all of those arenas.
Was there a process involved that allowed you to give yourself permission to really kind of live out all those different facets of your life? I mean, it sounds like you kind of started already in family medicine, which is already a little bit of everything, and then taking on the managing partner and maybe some more IT projects and the real estate of your practice, but you have expanded beyond that. What was the mindset shift? Did you give yourself permission finally? Was there a trigger of some sort or an event that happened? Or was it just the natural progression to grow beyond the walls of your practice and sort of take your impact to the next level?
I think it's always interesting to me to hear the stories of how folks ended up in coaching. And for me, it was a space of a relationship that didn't go the way that I wanted, and I was in a lot of pain. And so it was through that process of coaching where I really walked through and started to acknowledge like what I deserved, what I could claim for myself. I remember prior to that, like my practice, our full time is 4 days a week. And so we have one day that's a non clinic day. And I remember for a lot of my career feeling very guilty taking any of that time on that non clinical day for myself, whether that was, going for a hike or anything. I felt like, oh, if there was anything left in my business to do, that's what I had to do. I didn't deserve anything for myself. So a lot of that delayed gratification, which had been so ingrained in training. And one of the things that I learned through coaching was really to honor me and to allow me to choose some. So rather than it being those manic hobbies like, oh, I'm going to plant the best garden, or I'm going to can everything, or I'm going to scrapbook my entire life. I mean, that was sort of what I did. And then I felt guilty because then I went on to another habit. And what I learned and when I truly honored myself is like, it's okay for me to pick up an instrument and take a ukulele lesson once a week. And that can just be my time. It's okay for me to say that non-clinical day is going to be a day that I'm going to reserve for some of the other things that I want to do. And I was the only person who could give myself permission to do that. But it was through a lot of that coaching and getting past that sort of inner dialogue that is just so prevalent in my head. And I think in a lot of,
No,
type A people, and really giving myself, that permission to see what else was out there and what else would continue to fill that bucket and to fill me and allow me to remain in the space of medicine for as long as I have.
what are you looking forward to? What are your, when you look at what's ahead of you, and I don't really mean like adding something, but when you look at your trajectory and your future, is there like a vision, a plan? Are you just finding joy? Are you following? How do you see your vision, your future?
One of the I'm fortunate to have been married to the most amazing man. This is our 24th year of marriage and 27 years together. And as I look toward my future, I look toward a lot of impact that he and I have together. He is also an entrepreneur. He started an IT services company that he is managed and grown and been incredibly successful. And so what's really been fun in this last year is to see the impact that he and I have together, both in real estate investing realm. He and I were co-general partners with Black Swan Real Estate on their most recent fund with Elaine and Nick Stoggerberg. And that was an amazing opportunity for the two of us. We've shared our real estate journey together. And I really see this space of business coaching of he and I evolving together and having some more time freedom, maybe some location freedom once our kids are both in college. And that to me is what really excites me of ways. So that may transition me maybe less in the clinic. I don't think it's completely gone because again, I still really love what's going on there. But I think it's really not waiting until I'm old and gray to take advantage of opportunities to really spend time with my family and to spend time with people and in situations that really light me up.
Yeah, that is amazing. And so it just reminds me, I had the incredible opportunity just yesterday to be on a 10-person call with Joe Vitale, who did like a
Mhm.
lot of the mindset books, and we all got to ask him questions. And one of the things that I asked him was like what I thought was the difference between like just like success and his like level of quantum success. And he said it was really to be open to opportunities and saying yes
Mhm.
to the opportunities as they came along. And you just saying that kind of really reminded me of what he said too. It was just like, yes, it was just saying yes to opportunities as they came, if they felt aligned.
Right. And I think just the fact that I am thinking from this standpoint is such a departure from anything that I ever did. And yet it feels so consistent with who I am. One of the things, and you and I both know Elaine Stoggeberg very well, and I've been fortunate to be in her coaching program for the last year and a half. And she has really challenged us to look ahead into the future, to envision our life and what our ideal life looks like. And mine really is full of connection and people and family and being present at all of those really key moments. And maybe in ways that, in the looking back, I wasn't always able to be. And yet all of that seems completely possible. And all of that is just brings me so much joy because I see it actually coming to be. Even though I'm sitting here, I can see exactly how that could happen, even though I don't know all the steps along the way. So it's really just making the choices today that set that up and still allow that to be a possibility.
I think that is like such a beautiful conclusion to everything that we've talked about. What I really wanted to ask you as the last question is really if our listeners are listening, what is like one tip and pearl from who you are that you can share with anybody listening to like take with them from our conversation today?
I would say it's really to find those things in your life that bring you joy, to find those things, those places, those situations, the people that find you joy or that bring you joy, that allow you connect, that allow you to grow. Find those places because I think that's where you will find your true authentic self. That's certainly where I found my authentic self. That really is just what allows me to continue forward. So every day looking for those spaces and giving ourselves permission to show up in those spaces
And do more of that.
and do more of that. Right?
Do more of that. Like really when you find things.
Rinse and repeat and do it
And
again.
I have it as a like one of my mantras for this year is to follow joy. Is that
Mhm.
same thing? Like the reason I say it is just like follow joy. So wherever there's joy, like that's where I follow. That's what I turn towards. So I love that because again, it's like these huge synchronicities. Thank you. Would you do me a favor and just, we're obviously going to put all of this in the show notes. Also tell our listeners if they would love to connect with you, what are all the ways they can find you on, please mention your podcast as well.
Yes, I am on the internet at unclutteredmindmd.com. That's probably the place where you'll see all the things. My podcast currently is hosted there, Mind Behind the Curtain. It is a venture into understanding and learning from the paths that other amazing women have taken, and that is really in its infancy, and I'm excited to see how that grows. You'll also find links to the real estate webinars that we've done. I host a group once a month for right now it's been female physician entrepreneurs, independent practitioners, those sorts of things. So we'd love to have you join us there. I'm on Instagram as well, Uncluttered Mind MD. And like I said, right now we're doing our second in-person event, Winter Wonderland 2.0. That is full, but the wait list will be open for next year. And so continue to evolve. Yeah, you'll still see me continue to do more things because that's what I do. That's my zone of genius, but it's really a fun place to be.
Well, thank you so much for your vulnerability, your honesty, your time, and really your authentic sharing with me and our listeners tonight. Thank you.
It is such a joy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Aesthetic Doctor podcast with Dr. Judith Borger. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. Follow Dr. Borger on Instagram at Dr. Borger and find more online and ways to work with Dr. Borger at www.theaestheticdoctor.com. Until next time, be well.